Hello, everyone. And hello, Dr. Joe. Good to have you again with us.
I'm happy to be with you, Kasia.
Good to have you. So, before we start answering the questions that people submitted, there is a quick information for everybody who is watching us and is interested in original version of this recording. So, just stay tuned with us, and in a couple of days, you will get the original recording of this meeting today. And I also want to take a moment and acknowledge actually Agnieszka, who is our translator today, and also Andrew, who is making this live stream possible for us. So thank you for your time and your generosity of your time and your skills. And without further ado, let's start, Dr. Joe. Are you ready for us?
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm very happy.
Okay, awesome. So we have a first question, and one of the students wrote, so I will just read it. It will be easier this way. So I understand that our external world is a reflection of our internal world, and how we think and feel impacts in some way our external reality. So I meditate regularly, exercise, I don't watch TV. And I also acknowledge that not everything is perfect in my world. However, more and more I feel that I don't fit in this, reality right now with so many limitations that are imposed on us. So I often feel I don't have tools to maintain the joy of life. So what can I do?
Yes. Well, it's a good question. It means that this person is actually applying the work. This work is designed to help people live a better life, to have the ability in some way to change their body if they need to begin to synchronize their energy to see outcomes in their environment or their external world. But the key is to be able to be present in the moment and to be able to maintain that change for an extended period of time. Now, it serves nobody if we do our meditations, create a future, and then the moment we open our eyes, we start reacting and responding to the same circumstances and the same conditions with the same thoughts and feelings. It makes sense then if every object, every person, everything, every place that's known to you because you've experienced it is mapped in your brain neurologically. And if you've experienced every one of these elements, you have an emotion associated with it. As long as you're thinking and feeling equal to everything known in your environment, or better yet, you're thinking and feeling in the same ways in response to anything in your environment, then there's a dance between your inner world and your outer world, and you as the quantum observer are actually reaffirming that reality based on how you think and feel. Now, to change then is to be greater than the conditions in your environment and sustain that state of being. So then the practical application of this work would then be, okay, I have resentment towards my coworker. I have hatred towards my enemy. I don't like the current global situation and it makes me unhappy. Well, then the conditions in your world are actually influencing who you are, your state of being. And you may say, I feel bad about the global situation. I don't feel good about my coworker, and I'm unhappy, which means you're a victim to the circumstances in your life because your environment is controlling the way you think and feel. And we work very diligently in our week-long events and in our retreats to teach people how to change that. And it would make sense then if somebody truly was on the path to evolution, they may say, well, I have to sit with my coworker, or I have to be on 4 Zoom calls with them today. And I don't want to hold them to the past any longer. So then, is there another way that I can act when I'm in the presence of my coworker? What would love do? What would be a greater expression so that I would not return back to my old state of being? Now, if you don't know the answer to that question, then get up and find the information. And I'm sure somebody has faced a similar circumstance that had a solution. They've created a better experience. Learn and study a new way of being, or figure it out, and then rehearse in your mind how you're going to be in that circumstance. Well, the act of mental rehearsal begins to install neurological hardware. If you keep practicing it, the hardware becomes software and you start behaving differently. If you could say, I'm not going to let my energy drop when I'm with my coworker or when I watch the news, because if I start emotionally reacting, then I'm the same energy. And now if I'm the same energy, my life doesn't change. Okay, so what is a better way to be? I'm going to stay in my heart. I'm going to rehearse doing this, feeling the feeling that I'm feeling right now, and I'm going to imagine myself in that situation. Well, a clear intention, elevated emotion starts conditioning the brain and body into a new state of being. And the stronger the emotion, or the more you can sustain it, the more you'll remember what you're doing in that circumstance. So then the key is to evolve out of that experience. This work is designed to prime the brain and body in your meditation so that when you open your eyes, you're greater than your environment. You're greater than the habits and emotions that have been conditioned in the body, and that you can do it with your eyes open for an extended period of time. Now, we've gone through great measures with people to help them understand that sometimes we all fall from grace. We all lose it. But you're alive tomorrow and you have another opportunity. So at the end of the day, it may be really instrumental to ask the question, how did I do today? And instead of getting on your cell phone and texting someone or posting something on social media or watching television or whatever, actually take the time and say, wow, at 3:30 today, I went unconscious. I reacted again. If I had the same circumstance in my life, what would I do differently? And then rehearse that back in to the equation so that you can evolve your experience. And as you evolve your experience, lo and behold, your life starts to show up with synchronicities and opportunities that the rest of the world may not be seeing because they're doing the exact thing that you're evolving out of. And so there are opportunities to every circumstance and situation that exist, and those opportunities can only exist when you become aware of them. And awareness is consciousness, and you can't have that without a change in energy or frequency. So the job of this work is to raise our energy so that we're not viewing reality through the lens of the past emotionally or energetically. And then possibilities become doors that lead us out of circumstances that once made us unhappy. That process of initiation creates the side effect of what's called unconditional love, self-love. You feel proud of yourself. You feel satisfied. You feel like you've overcome something. And yes, sometimes it's easier than others. I know. I deal with it every single day of my life. We all do. And that's, look, we made the deal that we would descend from source, from singularity, all the way down into density. You know, fooled by our senses into the illusion of separation so that we could really experience with our own free will the ability to create reality. Now, when we do this and execute properly, and you start seeing those small synchronicities, those coincidences, those opportunities, you start seeing those serendipities happening around you, you're going to start believing more that you're the creator of your reality and less of the victim of your reality. And people who heal in this work do that exact thing. They start doing their meditations. They start understanding they can change their gene expression. They can change the way their brain is wired. They can change their state of being. They can change their energy. And they do it in their meditations, and they notice no change in their healing. And the astute person will say, I'm still the same personality. Let me write down the thoughts I got to change. I got to change the way I speak. I got to change the way I act. What is the unconscious habit? Do I complain a lot? Do I make excuses? Do I feel the majority of my day frustration, resentment, and unhappiness? Well, in the 16 hours I'm awake or 17 hours that I'm awake, I do 1 hour of meditation to change my state of being. And then the rest of the time I'm back to my old self. Don't expect those synchronicities to happen because you return back to the old self. The mastery of this work is to remind ourselves who we're going to be with our eyes open and be able to maintain that modified state of mind and body the entire day. And if you can keep your energy up and keep it coherent, that's when you start seeing feedback in your life. Now, what's the beauty behind that? The moment you can correlate what you're doing inside of you with the effects that you're creating outside of you, you're going to pay attention to what you did and you're going to do it again. And the surprise of that synchronicity or that opportunity or that coincidence creates an excitement of energy. You feel inspired, you feel hopeful, you feel grateful. And that's the exact energy that you will use the next time you sit down to manifest or create. So now there's no longer a vibrational match between your energy and everything that's in your past, present reality. So then people have to sit in their meditation and they have to sit in the fire. And while they're sitting there doing absolutely nothing, noticing the body's getting angry, getting frustrated, getting impatient, feeling unworthy, wanting to quit, feeling self-doubt. This is where everybody says, oh, I can't meditate. They believe that voice in their head. Actually, I want them to know that they're doing their meditation right, not wrong. They're actually doing it right, because that's when they go to their cell phone. That's when they call up their friends. They're trying to make that feeling go away that's always there. And they're distracted by all the elements in their environment so that they don't have to pay attention to this feeling. Sitting in your meditation and coming up against that frustration, coming up against that entitlement, coming up against that unworthiness, that self-doubt, right on the other side of it is a tremendous amount of freedom. So then we take people past that point, and if they can continue working with their body emotionally and bringing it back down to the present moment and lowering the volume to that emotion, if that emotion is keeping them paying attention to the person or their problem, if they can overcome their emotion, they'll take their attention off that problem or that person, and literally they're calling energy back to them. And that's energy that's building their own field. And now there's energy to heal. Now there's energy to create. Now there's energy for a mystical experience because you've taken your power back in some way. So this is not a linear process. I've been doing this long enough to tell you, you don't have a series of 10 perfect days in a row. You may, but you're going to be challenged and initiated to a greater level of consciousness, to a greater level of mind, to look at the problem in front of you and say, there's a solution in the quantum field. I just got to bring it to life with my awareness. Can I learn some information? Has anybody else faced this problem? Let me review it. Let me rehearse what I'm going to do. This is practical now. This isn't just spirituality. This is practical. So now you're rehearsing it in your mind, and you're priming your brain for that event to no longer think and feel the same way. And if you can practice heart coherence and be able to self-regulate with your eyes open, I do it all day long. And sometimes I have to excuse myself and close the door and get back to the energy, the emotions that keep me connected to my future. And if I fall prey to a reaction, it's in a matter of moments, my response from the environment causes me to disconnect from that energy in the future, and I'm back to the energy of my past. And if you say to me, what's wrong? And I tell you it's that person or that circumstance, well, then I'm back to the unconscious program of being a victim. And that then has to change. So many people are reliant unconsciously on the belief that something in their outer world has to take away what's going on in their inner world, the way they think and feel. A drug, a TV show, a whatever, a relationship. They're dependent on their outer world. And when things are good, they feel good. And when things are bad, they feel bad. But that's not what this work is about. This work is about self-regulating and balancing your attention between your outer world and your inner world. Well, what changes that? Stress, the hormones of stress, survival. In survival, you don't put a lot of attention on your inner world. Now all of your attention is on your outer world because that's where the danger is. And so there's a contrast where people forget or go unconscious and no longer pay attention to their thoughts and feelings. In fact, they believe those thoughts to be true. And this is where it gets dangerous because they're in an altered state. That's what stress is. When you're knocked out of balance and our perception of the world changes, and then everything becomes a danger. And people don't think they have any control over that. Turns out that we have research to prove that people who actually practice it every single day get really good at it. And what's the side effect of it? They're not so disturbed by people. They're not so disturbed by the news. They're not so disturbed by certain circumstances or conditions globally in the world. They see it through a different lens. And while everybody else is stuck in the same consciousness and nothing's changing, they're the ones that are finding doors to other opportunities and are not letting their environment cause them to be victim to any of those circumstances. So this work is about the practical application. We do the morning and evening meditations, and I don't know if they're in Polish yet, but maybe one day they will be.
They're coming. We are just translated, so we'll be soon.
Yeah, so the morning and evening meditations are a great way to really prime your brain and body about who you're going to be the entire day. And at the end of the day, look to see how you did and then rehearse it back into the equation. So your subconscious mind while you're sleeping is consolidating all that information in your brain and bodies, and you're changing. And it may take a week, it may take 2 weeks to get it down. But once you get it down, you've evolved out of your ex. You've evolved out of your coworker. You're evolved out of a global situation. It's no longer something that's controlling you. Independent of what's going on, you're having miracles happen in your life. That's mastering your life. And that's what this work is about.
Okay, thank you. That's beautiful, deep answer. So really appreciate it. I will go with the next one, which is, can our scary thoughts, let's think about, scary thoughts, still in some way manifest, even though that we are not longer giving them, attention, but at some point of our life, they really made an impact on us. Can they in some way still have, yeah.
Okay, well, let's break this down because this is a question worth answering. Number one of my greatest moments in my life when I realized, watching my thoughts in a meditation, that none of these thoughts are actually true. I realized that I was making stuff up. And just because you have a thought doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Now, when you have a thought and you're conscious of that thought, your conscious awareness of that thought allows you to decide if you're going to accept that thought, if you're going to believe in that thought, if you're going to surrender to that thought without analyzing like this isn't the truth. If you don't, it slips by your awareness, unnoticed or unchecked, and it begins to have effects on your physiology and your body. So you have a scary thought, a fearful thought. That fearful thought usually is connected to an image of an outcome, that something's going to happen to you in the future. If you have that thought and it produces the feeling now of fear, now it's made it to your body. Now, one time you catch yourself, no big deal. You can catch yourself, return, take a breath, return back to balance and say, okay, I got to pay attention to that thought. But if the feeling of fear then arouses more of those thoughts, and those thoughts produce more of those chemicals and feeling, we take a thought and a feeling, an image and an emotion, a stimulus and a response, you're actually conditioning the body to subconsciously be vigilant, anxious, or fearful. Now, if you do that enough times, the body now is programmed into fear, not the brain. The brain's firing and wiring, but now it's in the body. So now you do it enough times, and then all of a sudden the body has a panic attack. Why? Because you programmed it subconsciously that way, and it's going to release energy in terms of an arousal. And that body is going to go into a sympathetic response. Now, then you worry about when the next one's going to come, and you start worrying about that, and now you're in a cycle, right? So one thought is nothing. Catching that and breaking that loop of thinking and feeling is the work, because to change then is to be greater than the body, which we've conditioned to be the mind. The challenge is that if someone gets to this point and they decide in sincerity, I'm going to stop this process, then they would have to manage their thoughts and become so familiar with those images or those thoughts that they wouldn't slip by your analytical mind or your critical mind or your brain unnoticed or unchecked. Now, that is saying I can observe the thought and notice it without responding to it. And the observation of that hardwired thought means that you are no longer in the unconscious program. You're the consciousness observing yourself in that program. And that's how we disentangle from that process. Now, in addition to that, every thought has a frequency. Every thought produces a field of energy. And the thoughts that are based in fear, the thoughts that are based in anger, the thoughts that are based in suffering are slower vibrational thoughts. They're further away from an energy that has a greater effect on the nature of reality. So it may manifest way down the line in some future. If you keep having that thought, you keep dropping the same pebble in the water, and it's going to take time, and those frequencies are slow in getting out. We work in this work to create from a greater sense of wholeness, a greater frequency, a greater sense of love or elevated emotion. And those higher frequencies manifest in a shorter amount of time, because that higher frequency means we're closer or more connected to source. So many people are mismanaging their thoughts and feelings, and the effect of, say, stress or fear creates a disorderliness in the brain. So now the brain is incoherent, and now they have very, very little effect on producing outcomes in their life because they've lost their connection to the field. So the outcome is, if you're matter trying to change matter, then you work hard and you fight for it and you push for it, and everything takes time. But you can think positively all you want, but if your body's been programmed into fear, that positive thought never makes it to your body because mind and body are in opposition. Practice changing your emotional state. Practice creating heart coherence. That heart produces a field. That energy can carry the thought of whatever it is you want to create, and keep broadcasting that signal into the field from a greater frequency, and then become the scientist in your life and see, am I producing any effects? If not, how am I in my waking day? Is my brain and heart coherence? Let me get back into it and let me practice doing it with my eyes open while I'm brushing my teeth, while I'm doing the dishes, while I'm sitting in traffic. Why not do that and know that when you do that and you synchronize your energy, you start seeing those synchronicities in your life. So one scary thought doesn't do anything, but if 95% of most people, by the time they're in the middle of their life, are unconscious thoughts, behaviors, habits, and emotions, then the first step to change is to become conscious of those unconscious states. And we have seen literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people with clinical anxiety or clinical depression master those thoughts and feelings to the point where there were significant changes in their brain and body, and they were no longer at effect of those scary thoughts. So one scary thought, no. Several scary thoughts and it's slipping by, it first affects your body. Then ultimately, you start losing the power to be able to create in your life, because we lose our connection with our brain and heart to the field. And then in survival, you got to rush to get what you want. And in stress, of course, now you're forcing things and fighting for things and competing for things and controlling things and trying to predict things. And this is where we fall prey into very limited states. So the transformation of those thoughts and feelings into something else, and becoming so conscious of those unconscious thoughts, so familiar with those behaviors, so aware of those emotions, that you work as the gatekeeper, the governor, to allow what thoughts you're going to allow to affect your body. And I watch people do this all the time. They sit down at a dinner table and I'm sitting with them and they spend 20 minutes complaining about everything. And I'm aware that their complaint is actually reaffirming their belief about reality. And it's not good or bad. They'll just do that for a while on the journey until they're done doing that. And then they'll do something else. And so that's the evolution.
Thank you. So, and you mentioned in your answer about brain coherence. So how to actually practice that brain coherence?
Well, look, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of brain scans. One of the reasons why we started doing functional scans is because we started seeing profound changes in people's health right during an event. And I wanted to know what was going on in their mind and in their brain. And I wanted to prove that it wasn't just in their mind, that these changes were actually in their brain. And so when you live by the hormones of stress, and that's 70% of the time for most people, the arousal of those chemicals causes a surge in energy in the body, and you feel like you're your body. The surge in energy causes you, as I said, to pay attention to all the elements in your environment. What's your environment made of? Objects, things, people, bodies, places. And we become very preoccupied with time, like we got to rush to get what we want. And time changes, our perception of time changes. So in that threatened, aroused state where we're perceiving a danger, we narrow our focus on that material world. And in fact, the hormones of stress heighten our senses. And now we're engaged in three-dimensional reality. And we edit out energy and information, the frequency. So that becomes the habit. The crazy thing about it is that this is how we're taught to pay attention as a child. Tie your shoe, watch the car, watch the step, and wake up. You know, that kind of arousal is causing us in an emergency state to look at whatever's in front of us. Turns out that's only one form of focus. So a person whose brain is incoherent and they're trying to control and predict everything in their lives, and they're shifting their attention in that aroused state from one person to another problem, to another thing, to another place, to another scenario in their mind, the brain starts firing very, very incoherently, out of order. And people get stuck in these patterns, and it becomes habituated. So we found out that if you did the exact opposite, if you took your attention off the material world, off of matter, from a narrow focus, or what's called a convergent focus, what if we did the opposite? What if we opened our focus and focused on nothing, just emptiness? And the Buddhists have done this for thousands of years. Broadening your focus and opening your focus, and going from the known to the unknown, from the material to the immaterial, from matter to energy. If we can place our attention on that open state, we start picking up frequencies and information, and it begins to entrain the brain into more order, into more coherence. And the brain that was once subdivided starts to synchronize. We see this on a scan. All of a sudden, you'll see the front of the brain kind of resonating with the back of the brain. Different compartments start forming bigger communities, and the brain is starting to synchronize. And now we know the person is feeling more whole, feeling more balanced. And the practice of doing this causes the entire brain to be on the same symphony, to all of a sudden be on the same rhythm. They're all at the whole entire brain is in resonance. And when that occurs, when all the brain's areas are functioning in coherence, the energy starts to build and it starts creating more energy. The interference starts creating more energy constructively in the brain, and the person all of a sudden has more awareness, all of a sudden is more clear, is more creative, is more spontaneous, has new ideas, is less preoccupied with all the things that once bothered. They're less analytical. And we've seen that this is a skill. And if you practice it, our student body, when we looked at the data, they're able to change their brain waves and produce that type of coherence in very short, in seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 9 seconds, 12 seconds, and has nothing to do with diet. It has nothing to do with what how much exercise you have, how skinny you are, how overweight you are. It doesn't matter what color of your skin, how sick you are, how healthy you are, how young you are, how old you are. None of that matters. We've seen it in all shapes and sizes, all cultures, and it's just a skill. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. And what's the importance of that? Learning how to change your brain waves and getting out of that high beta aroused state is very important, because in order for you to change an unwanted habit or unconscious program, you have to get beyond your analytical mind and learn how to change your brain waves to get into that operating system where you can begin to make those important changes. So it's not just enough to change your brain waves, although that's essential, but we see greater effects when people can change their brain waves and produce coherent brain waves. That's a signal. That's a strong directive in the field. That's a carrier wave of information. And now they can have a clear intention, and that's essential. And if you can combine that with heart coherence, because when the heart is stressed, it beats out of order. When you're resentful, when you're impatient, when you're frustrated, when you're judgmental, the heart beats very incoherently, and energy leaves the heart, because the incoherence of waves, like a choppy sea, creates interference that diminishes energy in the brain, diminishes energy in the heart, and the heart has no field. Now, you lost your connection. In fact, you're not even aware of energy, because all of your attention is on matter. And the emotions of fear are telling you that it's real. Something is dangerous, and you could be in trouble. Turning that around and taking fear and turning it into an elevated emotion, and teaching the body that it's safe enough to create. Once energy makes it to the heart, it moves right to the brain. I've seen this a number of times. And when the heart and the brain are in this rhythm, and the heart is influencing the brain to move into alpha coherence, and the brain is sending signals to the heart saying, it's okay, it's safe to create. And all of a sudden, the creative center, the heart, produces that external field that's 3 meters wide, and that's energy. And now you have a magnetic signature that can literally begin to draw experiences to us. And that energy then can carry the thought of a synchronized brain, a harmonic, that produces a Wi-Fi signal that allows you to synchronize your energy more proficiently. And once again, practicing heart coherence is a skill. And we see people in a week-long event have no skill set at all in being able to do it. Their heart is completely out of order or very weak in a lot of ways. And practicing it just a few times a day, every day, by the end of the week, there's more energy in the heart. There's more coherence in the heart. The person's feeling better. We know their immune system will get stronger. We know that the gene expression will change. We see all of these side effects because the body is so objective that it does not know the difference between the real life experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion the person is creating by thought alone. The body's believing it's in a new environment. And if the environment signals the gene, and it does, and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, that person's signaling genes ahead of the environment. And genes make proteins, and proteins are responsible for the structure and function of the body. And the expression of proteins is the expression of life. And the person all of a sudden literally starts to change right in front of us. So brain and heart coherence and the dance between the two is so essential for the creative process. So people say, I want to heal. And I say, wait. Learn the formula on how to heal before you get impatient and say, how come I'm not healing? You probably haven't healed because you haven't learned the formula on how to heal. Once you learn that formula, then the effect of that is changes in our body, changes in our environment, and changes in our future in some time.
And also, well, in answering this question, you mentioned about brainwaves. So one of the questions is, what are the simple techniques to achieve alpha state?
Well, here's the funny thing about this. People all the time think that this is some mystery, like they're never in alpha, and how do I get there? Well, let's give you two simple examples. What do you do when you go to bed at night? What does everybody do? They get under the covers or not, and they get comfortable, or they get in a good position, and then all of a sudden they close their eyes and they see blackness and they stop thinking. And the moment they stop thinking, they fall asleep. And what they do is they very quickly, in a very comfortable position, go from beta to alpha to theta to delta. And we slide right down that scale very quickly when we fall asleep at night. And the body goes into rest and repair and regeneration. So when you wake up in the morning and your brain chemistry changes because there's a circadian rhythm, then you go from delta to theta to alpha to beta. And some people, when they wake up in the morning, because of my change in schedule, I like to linger in alpha. And alpha is your creative state. That's when you get ideas. That's the imagination state. That's when you're not so locked in beta, where all of your attention is on the outer world. So that being said, we naturally do this all the time. And think about when you're stressed. If you're stressed or you're in survival, it's really hard to fall asleep. And why is that? Because the cortisol levels from stress lower melatonin levels. It's not a time to sleep. There's danger out there. There's a predator around the corner. Stay awake. And so the brain gets stuck in these high beta patterns in the aroused state. And people need to take a drug or something to help them, something external to help them change their brain waves. Well, when you do the meditations, I'm asking you to do the exact same thing that you do when you sleep. All I want you to do is sit up instead of lay down. And I want you to just keep relaxing and not thinking. And if you're not analyzing and thinking, you start slowing down the function in your thinking brain, right? And as you start dampening down the neocortex, you start getting beyond the analytical mind, and brain waves naturally move. And the cool thing about it is when you're in beta, there's a voice in your head that's always talking to you. Do this, do that, look at that. In alpha, the voice kind of goes away and the brain sees more in images and pictures. That's the creative state. In beta, the outer world's more real. In alpha, our inner world starts becoming more real, and it's a time to create. In beta, high beta, it's not a time to create. It's time to run, fight, or hide. Nevertheless, we want to teach people how to learn how to slow their brain waves down just like they do when they're sleeping, and allow their body to feel safe enough to rest while they stay conscious and awake. And it's a practice. And sometimes when you learn, you fall asleep and you go too far. And sometimes you're looping and you got a thought that you just can't get beyond, and that's normal. But with constant practice, we can do that same thing as we do when we go to bed at night and we wake up in the morning, but we can learn the terrain, all the different frequencies as we do it. Now, another example, you're driving down the road in your car. You have a long highway ahead of you, and all of a sudden you start thinking about something and you forget that you're driving the car. You don't see the road out in front of you. You're not even aware that you feel the pain in your back or that you're driving the car with your body. And you just drove past the exit because you lost track of time. Well, where were you? You were inward, right? The frontal lobe is creating a series of images. And in that state, your inner world is becoming more real than your outer world. And that is the exact state we're looking for people to begin to do the change and creative process. So we do this all the time. Third example, when you're learning something new, I watch this in audiences all the time. The person is sitting there listening to me talk, and I'm carrying on, explaining all these things, and then they go like this, they stop and they go like this. And what they're doing is they're shifting from conscious awareness in beta into alpha, and they're freezing an image in their mind, a model, a hologram, a symbol of what all that knowledge means in a picture. And as they change their brain waves from beta to alpha, their inner world becomes more real than their outer world. Their brain moves into a trance-like state. It freezes for a moment, and we begin to consolidate that information neurologically in the brain. We emboss it, we imprint it. Neurons organize into networks to reflect what that image is. And now we're laying patterns down in the brain from what we're learning. And we can't learn unless we can shift from beta to alpha. And so if you're living in stress and you're caught in that high beta state, it's really hard to learn something new because the information you're trying to learn is not consistent with the emotion you're feeling. Your body's saying there's danger, there's a threat, and it's not a time to learn, right? So some people that are more relaxed in their life, they do this naturally. Some people that are a little bit more high strung or a little bit more type A, a little bit more vigilant, they have difficulty getting beyond their analytical mind. But let me tell you, if I can get beyond my analytical mind, anybody can. I mean, that's the truth. So we want to teach people how to regulate their brain waves, but they naturally do it. So I don't want to make it something that's so mystical, so outside of what they're capable of doing. They already know how to do it. And what would be some of the things that would help? Sit up instead of lay down, get comfortable, take a couple slow, deep breaths to convert your nervous system from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. Hold your breath, let the tension in your body build, exhale, and relax. Do a series of those where you start relaxing. Keep your eyes closed, don't think of anything, and keep relaxing. Your brain waves will naturally start moving into alpha. Then when you catch a thought and it starts arousing your brain, up, and we come back and we go back down and just keep practicing. And you'll go up in beta and alpha. We see this all the time. And then you start getting into those lower levels of alpha. And then when you're in theta, you're very, very programmable. It's a hypnotic state. You're very suggestible. And in theta, your body is in a light sleep, resting, and you're conscious and awake. In other words, if the body has been conditioned to be the mind and the body is asleep, it's no longer the mind. You're the mind now, and it's put away. And the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is wide open to information. Now, that's what a hypnotist does. They put a person into that suggestible state and then they program them to do certain things. But our interest is not only to rewrite the program, but then to tune into information that's not coming from your senses. In the meditation, we want you to have a coherent brain and heart and tune into information that's carried on frequency, coherent frequency. And the more coherent and resonant your brain is, the more there's a resonance between your brain and that frequency, a harmonic, if you will. Now the brain is going to be suggestible to information that's no longer coming from your senses, but from the field. And the brain will transduce it into very profound imagery or information, and you'll get a download. And it'll be an answer to something in your life. It'll be an intuition. It'll be a knowingness. It'll be pertinent to you. And that's when the brain and the heart are dancing as one. So it's a process, but we have thousands and thousands of people around the world that had to make the same journey, falling asleep, sitting up, getting frustrated, getting impatient, wanting it to end. When's the music going to change? All of that is the busy mind. But if you keep practicing it and you catch yourself, those are victories. Those are the victories that add up. It's not that you can't meditate. It's just that you're learning the process of doing it, and you got to remove everything that stands in the way between you and your connection to that field. And if you're going to create from the field, you better be aware of it and you better feel connected to it. And when we practice that enough times, we begin to create from the field instead of from matter. And where we're going is to be able to do this with our eyes open, as well as our eyes closed.
Thank you. Okay, I have a last question. I'm checking time. We still have a few minutes, so we should be on time. And this question in some way probably will relate to the first one, but I always appreciate how you can, take the question and answer from a little bit different angle so we can have a better level of understanding. And you always surprise me, and it's like, for me, it's like, oh my God, there is really more to it. So the question is how to deal with the excess of bad events, habits, emotions that come completely unintended or unannounced, that then decrease the level of high vibrations, making our affirmations weaker, and then as a result we kind of find ourselves in that vicious circle, that loop. Well, kind of, I did it again and I don't want to do it again. So how can we break free from that?
Well, listen, I kind of answered this question, but let's attack it from another way. What do you think?
Yes, please.
We have to decide every day if our response to our outer world is going to weaken the organism, you or anybody, or it's going to empower or strengthen the individual. So if a person starts reacting to circumstances in their life, the brain only learns two ways: by mistakes and by surprises. And if you can manage yourself when you have an unforeseen event happen, that lowers your vibration. Look, it happens to all of us. Nobody is there yet. But people who let that occur to them and excuse themselves from changing and say, I've been in a slump, I've been unhappy for weeks, they're giving their power away to change by doing that. People in this work that are practicing and are sincere, as I said, they will excuse themselves from the world that they are presently in and say, I have to change this, whatever it is, lower vibration, whatever you want to call it, to something else. And then now you're out of the bleachers and you're on the playing field. This is no longer philosophy. This is no longer theory. This is now, once you know, you can't not know. So that means then you would have to literally, in that moment, make a decision. I'm not going to let any circumstance, any person, any object, anything take my energy from me. Now, because you're giving your life force, your power to create, to something outside of you. And the stronger the emotion you feel to that person or that problem, the more you're going to pay attention to them. And where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And in a sense, your energy is connected to that circumstance or problem. Lower the volume to that emotion, and you'll take your attention off that person or problem. Now, many people, including me, when we're in these emotional states, somehow don't believe that we can change them, because the emotion is telling you there's no solution. The emotion is telling you this is reality. And now we're fooled further into the illusion of separation and three-dimensional reality. Great, great people in history knew how to manage their emotions and to manage their attention. And your life then is the initiation. So you can't, if you see your life as an initiation, then you can't blame anyone or anything. You have to say, okay, this is what's being presented to me as the creator of my life. If I react emotionally to it, and those emotions inspire or create certain limited thoughts, then I'm recreating the same reality. That's it. I'm recreating the same outcome in my life. Okay. Even though everybody else looks like they're reacting the same way, I have the permission to react the same way, then I'm part of that collective consciousness. But if I can temper my emotional reactions, in fact, it's not even that we react. I mean, I react. The question is, how long are you going to react? That's the real question, because if you let it go for a long enough period of time, it becomes part of your personality. And you say, why are you that way? Well, this thing happened to me 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you're living by the same emotion. Well, that tells me you haven't changed in 10 years. So people who do this work, that are sincere in their efforts, people who really want to change, they learn how to shorten the refractory period of their emotional responses, and it has nothing to do with positive thinking. They're not going to just think positively. They're going to change their state of being. They're going to, for a moment, in that moment when they're emotionally reacting, take a moment and get back in their heart. Yeah, and sometimes it's harder than others, I know. But if not now, when? Because it doesn't seem like the world is all of a sudden going to change because of you. The truth is that we're going to have to be greater than everything that is in front of us and learn how to do something completely different that doesn't feel natural or normal. But then again, if you want to become supernatural, then you got to stop doing what's natural and normal and try something else. And as I said, you can't tell me you're too old to do this. You can't tell me you're too sick to do this. You can't tell me you're too out of shape to do this, or you never meditated before. You can't tell me any of that stuff any longer. I've seen it too many times. So then the execution of personal change and transformation in response to your life and making different choices on how you are going to think and feel, independent of what's going on in your environment, your body, and time. That's what this work is about. And we do our best to give people the resources, the tools, and equip them so that they can practice, not just doing their meditation to be spiritual or to please God or do the right thing or whatever that is, but to do it because they are the creator of their life. And I would never tell a person how to live their life. I want everybody to have the free will to create whatever life they want. So if it's in front of you and you believe that you're the creator of your reality, now this is an important point, because many people say I create my reality, and I used to do this too. Only on the good things I took credit for, but on the bad things, it wasn't me. Well, that's not the truth, right? You got to go all in on this. I mean, all in on it, which means then whatever's presented in front of you, you have one of two choices: to react in familiar ways, or to stop and pause and not react and change your emotional state, which means there's no longer a vibrational match between you and what's in front of you. And if you keep your energy connected to the future, your body's going to follow your mind right to an event that is different than any event that you've had up until this point. And that's the magic of moving out of different levels of reality, different levels of consciousness. And yes, it's done by trial and error. And we make mistakes, and we learn from those mistakes, and we modify our behaviors, and we do a better job. And that's called plasticity. And when we fall back into unconscious patterns, we got to go back in and disconnect from our environment, sit our body down and not let it eat and smell and taste and get up and feel and experience. You're putting it away for a reason. You're saying, this time you're no longer the mind, I'm the mind. You're going to sit and stay. And when I'm done and I feel differently, then we're going to get up and we're going to present ourselves to the world as a different individual. Now, I know human nature. It's my business. I watch people in events for years now. Many people lie to themselves when they do this work because they don't want to stretch themselves past the point where they're uncomfortable. Now, once they get uncomfortable, they want to quit and believe in the thought, I can't do this. The person who's no longer making it about right and wrong, success and failure, good and bad, any of that, the person who's really ambitious to understand what they're doing and understand why they're doing it will make the how much more easier, because they'll have a greater intention and assign more meaning to it. So I have worked for years to use science as the contemporary model of mysticism so that I don't exclude anybody in the community. And I don't want to leave anything to conjecture, nothing to superstition, nothing to dogma, nothing to spiritual mumbo jumbo. I want people to understand the concepts so completely and be able to explain them in their thinking brain that that thinking brain supports them in wanting to do the work because they want to experiment to see how powerful they really are and awaken to the understanding that that intelligence that's giving them life is actually loving them quite a bit, and they can make time and contact it. And when they do, there's an arousal that takes place that is not fear. It's not pain. It's not aggression or anger. The arousal is ecstasy. The arousal is connection. The arousal is pure love. It's a word that I don't even have a word for. It's an awakening, and you realize that that feeling that you just ran into didn't come from a sports car, didn't come from a wardrobe, didn't come from a drug, didn't come from a person. It came from within you, and you stop looking for it out there. And now you start looking for it within you. And enough people now, Kasia, are beginning to make that journey. And we have brain scans to prove that when that occurs, the brain is altered in such a dramatic way. That person will never, ever be the same. They tasted the divine. And I want everybody to experience that, because it's like drinking a great wine or eating a great meal. You want other people to taste it with you. And that's our birthright. That's who we are. And I feel like the world is changing in such a dramatic way that people say, I can't meditate because there's too many things going on. No. Now is the time to lead by example in your life. And if you're not reacting, then you give people permission to do the same. And you start showing up differently than how they remember you. And that's called the unknown. That's the unpredictable. And you give people permission then, because of mirror neurons, to model your behavior. And you start changing a collective group of people. And that's how you change the world. We work on changing ourselves.
Thank you. Well, I think we just on time. Thank you so much. I always, I'm so always grateful that we can have you with us. Well, still, unfortunately, online, but I know when it will happen in real, it will be the right, perfect time to have you in Poland. And we're waiting for that green light to have the event. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for being with us. And again, waiting for the next time.
Okay, well, thank you for all your support. Thank you for supporting the community and giving them the right information and inspiring them to do this work. And all of you that are doing the work, I promise you, keep practicing. When you start seeing those events change in your life, then then you're doing it as well with your eyes open as you are with your eyes closed. And that's where we're going.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with us. And that will be it for now. And we will see you soon. Thank you.